Good morning this morning. My name is Rochelle Hunter Mosley, and this is Beauty Business Banking. I know everybody always say, oh, Rochelle's never talking about hair stuff. Hair stuff is always at the top of my list. However, it takes a lot to get me into the salon. I mean, a lot. I have to get my headspace together. I have to get my kids together. I have to get finances together. I have to get so many different things together. And my mental health is the most important thing. So I invited my friend, Danielle Busby. She's a therapist. Hey, Danielle.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You done made it to the couch.
I love it. I'm so happy to be here.
So I hate to mess up people's professions. So let everybody know what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Danielle Busby. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I primarily work with youth and families, where I specialize in child trauma and suicide prevention and intervention. And additionally, I'm just someone that cares a lot about mental health within the Black community specifically. So I'm a
Mm.
co-founder of an organization entitled Black Mental Wellness, where we really focus on decreasing the stigma around mental health and mental health treatment in the Black community. And we really want to provide resources for us by us.
I love it. I love all of that because we need all of that. We need all the support that we can get in our communities today. So first, I have a icebreaker question. Okay. Okay. What trip most affected your life so far?
What trip as it relates to travel?
Yes.
As it relates to travel, I have to really give it to my first real international trip. So, back in 2008, which was some time ago, I did study abroad in Tanzania. So, that was in East Africa, and I lived there for 3 months. It was a little over 3 months. And for me, that was my first time traveling to the continent of Africa. And it felt initially, it felt like it was going to be this homecoming, right? Like, oh, I'm going back home. But when I got there, it was such a very different experience because I really realized just that, I just had a different culture, a different experience than many of the people there. I love that I looked like the people that I was with, but we had just been socialized and raised and experienced so many things so differently. But it was such an
Mhm.
eye opener, and I was able to really see just the importance of context, the importance of broadening, sorry, widening
Broadening.
your scope, right?
Hmm.
As it relates to how a culture is or how people do things. And it was really just fundamental for me. I think I lived with a host family, so we didn't have any running water, we didn't have any electricity. Um,
Really?
I know, girl. And it was hard, right? We lived with the
Wow.
Maasai people for a certain amount of time. It was like a week of the trip. We lived with them. And these are people that don't believe in modern technology. They believe in living off the land. So we slept in tents. And it was beautiful in many ways because I was like, look at this whole culture and community thriving and
Wow.
and really really being able to be up close and personal and connected with this community. But it gave me such perspective in regard to the many things that we have in the US that other places don't have, but that we don't really need as much as we think we need sometimes to
Hmm.
still be in good spirits. These people were so positive. They were incredibly intelligent. They spoke like three languages. It really empowered me to just want to live a different type of life as it relates to taking advantage of the resources that I was given, and to just always stay open minded about what is possible and that something can be done a different way. And I don't have to judge it for being bad or wrong, but just different.
Right.
And
Right.
because it was my first trip, it really sparked every other trip that I took thereafter. And, I remember growing up and my dad would always try to educate me on things and show me aspects of the world. But we were not people that got on planes and traveled. Like my dad was
No.
doing that. We were getting in
No.
cars and
No.
driving long distance,
Hmm.
but we were not going across to other
Exactly.
continents. So I think I kind of opened that up for my family in regard to the possibility of doing so. So that's the trip that I think was most life changing.
That is fantastic. I love hearing all that. I love travel. I get on the plane every time I get the opportunity. But I invited you here today to talk about the broken trust muscle. And that resonated with me so much because I didn't realize that your trust muscle can be broken during your really real early years, like months old, maybe even at birth, because you
Mhm.
don't realize you're subconsciously depending on someone else to take care of you. So if
Mhm.
someone is not feeding you, if they're not nurturing you, they're not giving you the right tools that you need to thrive, and that's when that trust muscle is broken, right?
Mhm.
And then we don't really realize what happened. It's like, what happened to you? Not what happened to you. It's like, what happened? Like, really, really, what happened to you? So
Mhm.
how can do you have any insight on that?
Absolutely. I mean, as you speak about that in the context of the range of time in which that trust muscle can be broken, because a lot of times when we talk about the trust muscle being broken, we think about it in the context of relationships and we think about it in
Hmm.
the context of adulthood, right? And so I
Right.
love that you were able to, just ground us in how early that trust muscle can be impacted. And because I'm a clinical psychologist, because I primarily work with kids and I specialize in trauma, sometimes that can be traumatic, right? When that trust muscle is broken by really pivotal people like our parents, like the people that are in charge of taking care of us, it can then reshape how we view people and how we view the world, right? So how I engage with people moving forward might be with some hesitance, or I might be really hyper vigilant about, is this person okay? Are they not? Or I might guard myself because I already know that people have done things in the past that hasn't been in my best interest or have been deceptive in some way. And so I think it's important to think about how that's impacting us and to really understand for yourself, like when did that come up for me? Like when did I first have my big experience with that broken trust muscle? When did I feel deceived by the people that I was trusting to lead me or to be supportive of me in some way?
How do you think, Danielle, that we can really tap into if that's the issue with us? Because I knew that that was the issue with me because I know that my trust muscle was broken from, I can say, maybe 9.
Mm-hmm.
That I can remember that at the age of 9 when I felt like I wasn't being protected,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like every time I said something, I was blamed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that when we can go back as far as we can remember, like my dad always told me, she said he used to tell me, he used to say, people act like their last traumatic experience. Like if I had my last traumatic experience at 9 years old, then maybe sometimes I act like a kid. Sometimes I act like a 9-year-old. Some of us at teenagers, at 12-year-olds, you got grown men and grown women acting like, they 16. So
Mm-hmm.
can you give us an insight on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always give the analogy of this idea that if I was born in Alaska, for example, or Antarctica, somewhere really cold, if I was born in a place like that, naturally there are going to be things that I'm going to need given the circumstances. I might need some snow boots. I'm going to need a really, warm jacket, and I'm going to just know things about what it is to be in a really cold environment. And at 9 years old or whatever age people can identify as the first time that happened, and they lost a sense of safety in spaces that they should have felt safe, that they also develop skills. So I want to also say that just because these things happen doesn't mean that all is lost or you're forever broken. It means that you've developed certain skills to protect yourself in those environments, right? So when you're cold, you put on layers, you do what you need to do to stay warm. The problem is when we leave Alaska, when we leave that really cold place and say we move somewhere like Hawaii, or we move to LA, or we move to Jamaica, somewhere that's really warm, right? And you're still trying to practice those same things you did when you lived in Alaska, you're going to look silly, right? You're going to sweat. You might pass out because it's
Mm-hmm.
way too hot to have all those different layers on. It's way too hot to do that because your environment has changed. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times the way trauma works and the way that we like keep ourselves safe, or anxiety even, it doesn't even have to be considered trauma per se, but anxiety is all about, how do I keep myself safe? How do I protect myself from the things that I'm worried about occurring? And sometimes we try to use old strategies and old habits in new environments and new experiences. And so those same things that were protective at age 9 may not only not be protective as an adult, they could be harmful in some ways, particularly when you're around people and situations that are safe and that want the best for you. And then it can create those conflicts, right? Because we know that those experiences affect our thoughts. So how we think about things, our feelings, how we may feel in the situation. Is it safe? Am I comfortable? Can I be myself? My behavior. So how quick I am to connect with others, how hesitant I am, right? Like what that looks like. And ultimately our relationships. I'm going to be less open if I'm worried about if you are going to be honest or not, or if you're safe or not. And then ultimately we can end up getting in our own way, is what I name it as, when we're out of the environment. The thing that was very protective, safe, and necessary for 9-year-old you is sometimes not the same thing that's necessary and safe for adult version of you.
Right. I'm so happy that you said that because a lot of us take all of those childhood things and we trying to bring them into now, and we're constantly going through a paradigm. It's constantly a paradigm shift going on. Everything we know to be true has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then just like you said, it's like we can't take from what we did at 9 years old that same type of behavior and the same type of mentality as a 52-year-old woman,
Mm-hmm. But
still hawking
I want
on.
to name that it's normal though. It's normal to do that in
Mhm.
regard to just our physical body. So it's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's all about recognizing that, when things happen to us that are hard or we don't feel safe, our body is going to store that information. So even though you may know, I'm not 9 anymore. I know that this person isn't the same person that deceived me at whatever age. Your body thinks it is. And so you're going to
Mm.
have physical responses to that. Your heart might start beating fast. You might start to sweat. You may start to have difficulty with breathing or trouble to get your words out, right? Because your body is going through a response cycle that is saying, uh-oh, I've seen this before. I don't care about what your brain is telling you. This is not safe. So it's really important to educate yourself on, what did I experience? What are my triggers, right? Like, what are the things that trigger me? And people think triggers are these big events, and they're not.
Right.
It can be as simple, like, think about your five
Small.
senses. It could be as simple as seeing something. It could be as simple as a smell that you remember. It could be as simple as, like hearing a song and a flood of feelings
Mm.
emerge. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of times it's when we have these uncomfortable feelings within our body, we want to avoid them, we want to numb them. And we do that with substances or hanging out with friends or shopping, like whatever your thing is, we try to numb those experiences. But I want to encourage people to sit with them. I want to encourage people to name them. I want to encourage
Mm.
people to know, like, what are those things that trigger me and why? So that when they come up, you can then evaluate, do I need to follow what my body is telling me in this moment because I've had certain things happen in the past that are triggering me right now?
Right.
Or is it safe to make a new decision or go a new direction given the knowledge that I have now about what I've experienced?
Right. And that's what I want to encourage everybody that's listening. Like, we have to seek help. And we can't live on that old narrative that, oh, if you go to the therapist, you crazy. That old thing, that is for the past. The smartest thing that we could ever do is seek therapy. The smartest thing that we could ever do is to stay in therapy. It's not like I hear people saying all the time, Danielle, yeah, I did therapy already. Like it's something that you just finish. Like it's just something that you just put it up like a nice book or certificate on the wall. That's not what therapy is. So explain that to us.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I also like to be very, very transparent. I am a psychologist and I treat youth and families. I have a psychologist, right? So I want to be very clear that I am not just saying, oh, come see me. I'm saying I go see someone else, because there's no way that I can encourage people to come and engage in therapy and I'm not practicing that myself. I hear a lot of tough things from people every day and I hold a lot of space for people. I need to have a space to put that. And I know, especially in the Black community, we're holding a lot of space for a lot of things, for a lot of people often. And even in your role, I mean, I think of like being a hairdresser, people come and unload. They come to tell
Yes.
you about all the hard things. I think sometimes we think in order to go to therapy, it has to be really bad. I have to be at the top of, like, I can't even function. But in reality, many of us function through it. We function and keep going and keep moving and distract ourselves with the movement at the avoidance of actually processing and recognizing and learning strategies and skills for how to do it better. And so I want to be clear that you don't have to be at the worst possible place in your life to seek therapy. You could also just be somebody that wants to be about increased self-development. You want a thought partner in that process. And I think it's really critical to have an unbiased person in your life that can have that conversation with, right? It could be your closest friend who you love deeply, and they mean the best, and you need those friends for conversations, but they may still be impacted by some of the advice they're giving you, right? If you make a certain choice as your close friend, they may experience repercussions for that choice you make, but your therapist doesn't personally know you. Your therapist isn't involved in your life in an intricate way. So the advice and guidance and the sounding board that they are for you is much different. And I think that's a big distinction that we don't always talk about, or we say, like, I got friends, or I'm gonna talk to my, I'm gonna just talk to my friend and that'll be enough. But I think it's really important to have that isolated space. Because for me, therapy is also about being intentional about my goal for self-care, pouring into myself. And when you have a designated time and place that you are supposed to be doing that, I think it increases the odds that you do it well.
Right. It was so interesting. You were saying that it doesn't always have to be something big that has to be going on with you for you to get therapy. Because I was saying that for myself. I said, well, I don't have anything big going on. I kind of, tackled all my hard challenges that I felt my hard challenges were, and my childhood traumas and things. I feel like, oh, I got over that. Oh, that's over. That's over. And I was like, so I don't need therapy now. I just talk to my friend. So it was just so interesting that you even said that, because now I know that no, Ro, you need to find a new therapist and you need to keep this thing going, because it's not a one-time thing.
Right. And I want to also name that I don't want to say that we have to always be in therapy, because there are moments that maybe other types of support are important. And yes, friendship is a part of that. But also, what are you doing individually? Like, how are you reflecting about these things internally? Is it journaling? Is it spending time in nature? Like, what are you doing to slow it down? What are you doing to try to engage in forms of meditation? And I also think it's important to name that at different points of your life, things trigger you in different ways, right? Like when I was a single woman, it was things came up differently than when I was living with my partner, right? Like who I am and what happens changes at different times. So yeah, you may have dealt with the things that happened earlier in the context in which you were initially dealing with it, but what else has happened in your life since dealing with it that has changed, that has brought up new feelings, has brought up new experiences, has introduced new vulnerabilities, right? Like in some situations, you're more vulnerable than others. So you need different things in those moments. So I think it's also just taking a good, assessment of like, where am I at? What do I need? And how can I get this need met? And it doesn't always have to be formal therapy. Maybe it's talking to your religious leader. Maybe it's being intentional about that one-on-one time with yourself. But I think therapy is such a good way to kind of create that structure and habit for that intentional self-work.
Right. And what I was also thinking about myself, right, is like, how do I, well, I'm not, I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. Sometimes I feel like I wind up in the same place all the time. Like the same type of people, the same type of men that I date, the same type of friends, the same type, you know what I mean? So, and I'm talking about my trust muscle. I'm just thinking about, is it because I'm not trusting? Because I can't say, because sometimes I say, oh, I don't trust people. I don't trust people. But I go to restaurants, I get on a plane. I don't know the pilot. I do all these other things. I don't really know these people that's washing my clothes. I don't know these people where I'm taking my clothes to get cleaned. So what is it specifically? Sometimes we don't know specifically what it is. Like, how do we tap into that?
I always start examining and documenting, like whether it's just a journal, maybe you just take quick notes in your phone. Like, when does that feeling come up the most, right? When you feel that intense, like, I don't trust people. Because like you said, in certain instances, you can release and let go. So that tells me you have the skill to do it. So it may feel hard to do it in certain
Mm-hmm.
circumstances,
Right.
and easier to do it in others. Like when you don't have a choice, like I need to trust this pilot or I don't get to go on this trip, right? Like
Egg.
that's going to motivate you differently. But, in those day-to-day things, it's like, when does this come up and why does it come up? Like, what am I feeling in my body, right? I always say start with the thing that's physical. So what situation is it? Is your heart beating fast? Are you sweating? Do you notice that you don't feel as like open in regard to sharing? So you feel increased guardedness. Identify where is it showing up in your body first. Next, then figure out what is my criteria. I don't think it's unreasonable to not trust people sometimes, right? I'm from, no shade, I love my city. I'm from the city of Detroit, Michigan. And sometimes I know when I'm at home, I move a little different. Like I know what parts of the city I'm gonna move what way in because
Mm-hmm.
I have had past experiences and past knowledge
Right.
of what
Mm-hmm.
parts of the city that I'm just not gonna feel as comfortable or trustworthy in. And that doesn't mean that it's true to this day, but it means that that's my trigger, right? Like I know, I don't know. So what am I doing to evaluate it? And sometimes when we ground ourselves and what are the questions that I'm asking to assess is a
Mm-hmm.
really good way to kind of move forward, right? So what indicates safety for you? What do you need? What are your deal breakers? Like, what do you need from people to know that they're safe people you want to be around? What do you need from environments to know that they're safe places you want to be in? And then you decide, are those things checked out or not? Because I think a lot of times it's like, oh, this happened before, so it means it's gonna happen again. That's not 100% the truth, but it feels
Right.
like the truth. So I acknowledge it and want to validate for people, just because you feel a way strongly, that doesn't, I'm not, downplaying that feeling. That doesn't mean it's reality. And that doesn't mean it's the facts. So I always try to say, figure out how are you assessing what's safe and what isn't, and then how do you check the facts in the situation. I think sometimes we make assumptions that we don't know we're making because
Yep.
of past experiences we've had, and then we have to ask ourselves, well, wait, what evidence do I have that says that's true? Is it just my past experiences and that I'm putting on this next person or this next
Right.
place, or
Mm-hmm.
is there something else that I'm picking up on? And it's a balance, because I'm also someone that's like, trust your gut, right? If you really are feeling like something not right. I don't know. I know a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people have been watching the TikTok series, who the TF did I marry, right? And she's
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
walking
Mm-hmm.
through like, this was my sign, but I ignored it. This was my thing, but I ignored it. And I feel like when you can recognize like there were things that came up that you didn't properly assess, that's really
Right.
important. And so that you can do it
Very.
different the next time. And to give yourself grace. Like I think sometimes we are so hard on ourselves. We expect ourselves to have all the answers in moments that when someone is lying to you or being dishonest, you cannot then fault yourself for not knowing that they're lying to you and being dishonest, right? Like
Right.
you,
Right.
I try to assume good, but when it's red flags, I'm like, hold on, I gotta move different. I gotta
Mm-hmm.
ask some more questions. I gotta figure out what else I need to feel safe in this moment in my process of assessment, right?
Mm-hmm. And you know how people say, everywhere you go, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't escape yourself. And I know for me, I am a person, I did not ask a lot of questions in the past. I did not. It was fear of the person thinking I'm nosy. If I'm in a relationship, he thinking I'm nosy. The fear of all the things. Oh, he's not gonna like me anymore. Or he's gonna find somebody else. Or I'm not good enough. All those different fears come up, and it's just like But I'm taking this from relationship to relationship to relationship because I'm fearful and I'm afraid to trust.
Mm-hmm. And you
So it's
have
like,
to pay attention to those automatic thoughts, because you just gave some very automatic things that come up for you. Like,
hmm
I'm being nosy. And, I mean, versus someone being like, wow, she's really curious about me, right? Like how we choose to think about a thing, right? And that's oftentimes driven by what we've experienced in the past. I'm sure someone else has told you you've been nosy in the past,
right,
or I'm sure someone else has criticized you for being inquisitive. We can
right,
take anything and it could be perceived as negative or positive. And it's like, what's the cost of not asking it? What's the cost of not doing the question or not, getting the information that you need to feel safe? If the cost is I'm going to feel guarded and unsure the whole time and not show up as myself, it's like, then it's a decision of, do I want to pay that cost or do I not? What does it mean when I hold back? Right? Like maybe there's a balance. Maybe you can name, hey, know this might, I've had people tell me that maybe I feel like I'm being a little nosy in a situation, but I just really have a few questions that would just give me more ease or give me more peace. Is that okay
Right.
with you? Like, you can ask
Mm-hmm.
permission. Are you okay if I ask this hard question? You might think I'm a
Right.
little, you might think I'm doing a little bit too much, but I'm
Right.
just wondering if it's okay for me to proceed, you know? And now
Mm-hmm.
you get people's permission as you decide to navigate it while acknowledging a bit more than maybe the next person because I know myself. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the purpose is to know yourself, to know what you need, because I'd rather you be able to ask the questions you need to ask so you can show up the way you really want to show up, which is like
Exactly.
authentically and fully.
Exactly. And what I have learned too is that in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. And I was like, oh, I like that.
And I think it's another quote. I want to say Maya Angelou. I don't know. I could be totally misquoting.
What was
But
it?
just like people don't care how much you know until, I mean, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like they don't care about all the things you have expertise in or that you do or who you are. And so they think you care about them. Like people want to feel like you're really invested in them or invested in knowing them or getting to know them and open to that process too. So you got to
Right.
know what you need to do that, right? Because if you're like,
Exactly.
I need to know that you're not playing with me or you're not lying about XYZ, ask your additional questions if you need that to
Ask
get.
them. 100%. I think that the worst thing in the world is to act like you don't know. Act like the flag ain't red. Because sometimes the flag, it be a red flag waving like, hey, hey, like a sucker bus running by, and we will totally ignore it because we want these things so badly. And then we find up everywhere you go, there you are. Like you don't brought that same energy
Yep.
over here again.
Yep. And I want to just be clear. I am not guilty of any of the things, right? Like we
100%.
all have had these moments because one is uncomfortable. When you start getting those things in your body or you don't really know how to move, it's easier
Yeah.
to retreat. Like a natural response to something that feels triggering is to avoid it, right? Not gonna do that. I'm gonna just be pleasant, especially as women. I think we're taught to like take care, nurture, we can turn into people pleasers sometimes without really acknowledging like, but what do I need in this? What does it mean to please myself? Like what does it mean to like nurture myself? I think we give that away to everybody else. We don't always give it to ourselves. Or if we do, we're the last one to get it. And so we get just a little bit. We don't get
Just a
enough.
little bit.
Like, what would it mean to give that same energy, effort, thought, process, all of that we give to everybody else? What would it mean if I gave that to myself? Sometimes that's uncomfortable for us. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable to sit with self and focus on self because we've been taught to think it's selfish. We've been taught to think it's not ladylike. We've been taught to think all these things that really aren't true. It's taking care of yourself is just like when we go on a trip. What do they say? Put your mask on before you put it on
Hmm.
your child.
Anybody else?
Because
Hmm.
what happens if you fall out the game? It don't even matter what you can give to everybody else because you're no longer the vessel because you haven't really taken care of your temple in a way that is able to give to others because you got to get it yourself first.
Right, right, right. Oh, this has been a great talk. I mean, I've learned a lot because I didn't look at a lot of the things the way that you explained it to me. It helps me to understand who I am and where I'm going, and maybe, fear is just what? It's just fear. It's not real. It's just you're just afraid of it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
And
mean? It's still
and
gonna
it's
happen
okay
whether you're afraid of it or not.
And it's okay to do things afraid. I think sometimes we think we need to just be ready. I need to be 100%, okay. I don't have any reservations. And it's like, well, I can't think of many situations where I'm walking into just being like, I have no reservations. I have no thoughts about this. But sometimes just evaluating those thoughts and say, is it okay to still move forward? And sometimes you do it afraid. I used to run an anxiety group for younger kids, and we would have them like write things on the whiteboard to give as advice to the next set of kids that would come in. And one of my favorite
Hmm.
7 year olds in all types of misspelled language wrote like sometimes like my biggest advice is sometimes you just have to do it afraid. It doesn't mean that you aren't capable. You just have to be brave. Like you have to be brave and confront it. I think we feel like we have to have it all together. I think we feel like we have to, present in this particular way. And the reality is everybody gets afraid of something sometimes. And then when
Yes.
you acknowledge it, it automatically decreases how nervous you feel. Like when sometimes when people give speeches and they get in front of people and they're like, just, thank you for being patient with me. I'm a little nervous about being up here today. And
Hmm.
immediately people tell me, like, I feel so much better after that because now everyone's joined me in wanting to support me in this process. So I
Exactly.
think it's normal in relationships to be like, this is scary. I've had past
Yeah.
ones and it hasn't gone well. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to learn to trust again.
Hmm. I say the same thing, and that's why I like to have these conversations because my life is so extensive. It's not just in that salon. Like I'm dealing with things every single day, and I might look like I got it all together. I might look like I done figured all the things out, and I'm doing all the things. No, but I'm learning constantly every single day, and that's why I wanted to open up this type of dialogue so people can know that I don't have it all together. I don't know all the things. I have people like you. You come in when you come in a salon. What are we talking about
Yep.
relationships, about kids, about all the things, and it's like a closed mouth don't get fed.
And
Closed
just
mouth
the
don't get fed.
importance of being honest. Like when you can be honest with others, that means you first have to be honest with yourself. And I
Yes.
think when we're operating in truth, we move in such a better way because we're starting from the truth. When we're working to cover up things or present a certain way or hide certain things, whatever is given to you is not from a real place of honesty. And I'm not here to say, just go spill your information and your business to everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that we have to really release this need of perfection, or even especially with Black women. There's lots of research on this idea of the strong Black woman phenomenon and how it is a source of pride, but it also is harmful to us in a lot of ways when we pretend that I can do it all. We may physically do it all, but it doesn't mean it doesn't hold weight. Doesn't mean that emotionally
Yes.
we're not taking a hit for the things
Yes.
that we present well on, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think the quicker we can be honest with ourselves about needing the support, about needing to slow down, like even today's podcast, I just had to be honest. Like I thought I was gonna have the energy to drive back to do this in person.
Mm-hmm.
Then, it happened where I was like, I don't got it. I gotta tell
You don't
Rochelle the
got it.
truth.
Yeah.
And I want to still show up, but this is how I
Yeah.
can show up, right? So
And it
it's first
still worked out. And it still worked out.
exactly, and it
That's the thing.
still
I
worked
think we
out.
stand in the way of things working out. It's not because they're not working out because they're just not going to work out. The universe don't want this to happen for you. We are in the way, and we
By our
stand it.
own
Yeah.
desires to look a certain way
Yes.
and to be a
Yes.
certain way. And it's
Yes.
totally human and normal and acceptable to need breaks, to need to pour
Mm-hmm.
back into yourself, to get rest, and to need some reassurance. I think in relationships, it's okay to name, hey, I'm feeling a little insecure about where this is or what's going on. Sometimes I need, like, telling people what you need. It's good to hear how you feel about me. It's good to know, like, learning your love language, right? I'm somebody that, I will appreciate words of affirmation. I love acts of service, like knowing
Right.
what it is you need to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel loved, and expressing that to people and not being seen without seeing yourself as a burden or putting like you're being difficult. Because I think that's another thing we get put on us. It's like, oh, you're
Put
being
on
difficult,
us.
being
We
angry.
too strong. We too difficult. We too loud. We too all the things. It's
But you can still come and do everything for me. Thank you. Right? Like, no,
yes.
it's no limit. Like, well, wait,
Yes. Yes.
how does that
And
work?
that's why I don't like that word strong because I feel like strong give people the permission to not do anything because
Mm-hmm.
I'm so strong.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what me being strong means.
And
I
just
haven't
because
had
I'm
the
strong,
luxury of
yep,
not being strong.
or just sitting back and letting someone else
Yeah.
do it for
I
me.
haven't had the luxury of that. And when I did have the luxury, it could have got me into a lot of trouble. So it's it's just
Another part of truth. Yeah. Like I think that when we do that, it just puts more pressure on us, more weight on us. And I think people don't acknowledge that just because someone's capable of doing something because they're strong doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean that
right,
it doesn't come with a cost. I get
right.
people asking me to do things that I'm like, did you think about that ass before you said it?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's gonna take me a significant amount of time. Like they're like, oh, well, you do that all the time. That doesn't mean it's easy.
No.
It just means I do it all the time. So you see how hard I'm working all the time, and then you're asking for more. Um,
Right.
So I'm
Right.
glad
Because
to be.
some people's trust only go as far as their front door. And if you are that person that's at their front door, then that's as far as they're going to go. They're not going to go past you. So they are asking for unrealistic things. They do have unrealistic expectations because they have not moved their trust muscle past where it got broken. They
And I
can't.
want to also encourage people to like, I'm always a big proponent of like, if someone says something, make sure it matches with what you see they do, right? Like, whenever I do a check the fact moment for myself, I'm like, okay, I heard them say this. What evidence do I have about them that matches what they've said? Because people will sell you a dream, sell you a
Hmm.
story, sell you a narrative about who
Hmm.
they want to be, who they hope to be, what they think they say they want. But when their actions don't support it, I'm confused, right? Like, and I get it. Nobody is perfect, but
Right.
we need to see it's okay to want evidence. It's
Right.
okay to want some grounding in, all right, you say, you want to be married, you want to have this type of life. Well, what are you doing already that's getting you closer to that? Or if you
Right.
want whatever thing, right? Because that
Mm.
doesn't match when you see behaviors that completely contradict what someone is verbally telling you. So
Exactly.
I don't want anyone to walk away from this from feeling like, well, I just need to be more open to everybody all the time. No, no, no. I still want
No.
you to be thoughtful. And I want you to
Hmm.
use the facts to really validate if what a person is telling you is consistent.
Right, right. So this has been a good conversation, Danielle. I love it. I'm loving, loving, loving it, loving it. So just give us, but before we go, just give us like maybe five things that we can do to work on repairing our trust muscle.
So I think the first thing that anyone has to do when we're talking about repairing our trust muscle is that we have to reflect. We have to really go back and assess like where did the disruption in my trust muscle begin, right? So I think that sometimes, maybe you've done this work already, so it feels easier. But if you haven't opened these boxes or began to think
Mhm.
about your past in a significant way, it might be hard, which is why I would recommend doing this reflection with a therapist, with
Right.
a licensed provider that can kind of help guide you and walk you through that. So first, I'm going to say, do your own reflection to assess, do I need help in doing that reflection? Maybe that looks like a licensed provider. Maybe that looks like intentional journaling or
Hmm.
meditation, etc. And then I want you to take what you learned from that experience of reflection and think about, how do I want to do things different, right? That third piece of, what changes do I want to focus on? Sometimes I think we try to make too many changes at once and it feels overwhelming. But if you can pick your one or two things that you really want to focus on as it
Hmm.
relates to trust, I want you to be like, all right, these are the things I'm focusing on. These are the ways in which I'm going to intend to practice them. And then I want you to take action. Like, that step 4 is all about go practice. Sometimes we stay in our bubbles, right? Oh,
Hmm.
I'm eventually get there, but you haven't, if you're talking about dating, for example, and you haven't gone on a date, the person you date doesn't have to be the person you think you're going to marry. I want you to practice, like practice meeting people. Maybe it doesn't even have to be in the formality of a date. Go out places. If you're in your house, you don't get the opportunity to practice trusting new people because you're not meeting new people in your home. Go
Exactly.
meet people, go
Right.
to events, whether it's professionally,
Hmm.
maybe it's in other ways. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be able to show up like that. And then that last piece is, I want you to then evaluate, did this go well? Did this not go well? What do I need to do different as I walk in this direction? So I would kind of think of those 5 steps. You need to kind of assess, figure out what you need in support of that assessment. I want you to practice the things that you are deciding are good skills and strategy. I want you to
Hmm.
implement them, right? And then I want you to evaluate them.
Right. I love, love, love this. And like I tell my friends all the time, focusing on everything is like focusing on nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. Oh, this is cool. So tell us about your book before we leave. I want everybody to know about your book.
So this isn't necessarily about the trust muscle, but it's about stressors that Black youth face. So I just came off a book tour. It's called Healing Racial Stress Workbook for Black Teens. Myself and my esteemed colleagues, we wrote this because we know our Black youth are experiencing various racial stressors in their schools, in their communities, maybe even with their peers. And so if anyone is interested in that topic, you have a Black youth, you know a Black youth that needs this resource, please check us out. You can look at healingracialstress.com or Amazon to purchase the workbook. But Healing Racial Stress Workbook for Black Teens. I know it's blurring.
Yeah. Oh,
There it
yeah,
goes.
there you go. Right there, right there, right there. This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Danielle. I know that my viewers got a lot out of this. And this has been Beauty, Business, and Banking. Till next time.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.